Okay, welcome everyone to the Analytic Mind Podcast. I am joined by Brian Julius. It's awesome to have you on, Brian, and been too long since we last had you on, and
Way too long. I think I was episode number one. So
yeah, I mean,
it's been a lot of episodes gone by since then.
I know, and you've even held you've even run a few of them, so really appreciate that. But in my opinion, I think that we should chat more. That is my honest opinion. We should chat more regularly. There's just so much going on externally with just Power BI and also Power Platform, and also a lot of these other technologies that we're getting into at Enterprise DNA, and also internally with all of a lot of exciting initiatives that we're trying to roll out ourselves. So to me, there's just so much we should talk about more often, and I think the listeners would really enjoy it. I think we've got some pretty awesome topics today that we've noted down that we can chat about. One thing I will say is, unfortunately, this will be just slightly shorter than normal because I have something that I have to run to in about 40 minutes or so. But I think we'll be able to cover quite a bit even in that time. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Sam, because there's a lot of times when we're chatting, just you and I, and by the end of it, I think, wow, that would have been a good podcast. Like we covered a lot of stuff, and so yeah, I think having our regular chats kind of with the mic turned on would be great.
I think that's what we should do. And, instead of just having our chats on Teams, we should just push record and structure it around a podcast. To me that makes a lot of sense, because we always, I think, feel quite rejuvenated and excited about the future every time we're chatting about data related things that are going on in the market, or things that we're doing internally. So yeah, we've got to do it. In any case, I think the first topic, and the most exciting thing globally at the moment, is this Chat GPT, and how this, it impacts so much. It's absolutely insane. But I think more than anyone, you've probably done more testing on how this actually can interact with or affect your Power BI workflow, your Power BI development. And so my question is, what was your first impressions, and how have they evolved over the recent days since you've started using it?
My first impression was I was knocked out by it. I was feeding it questions, really specific questions. I was having it write particular M code functions. I was feeding it kind of the narrative version of the Excel BI nightly Power Query challenges. So like, for one, it was like, write an M function that will count the number of vowels in a text string. And it pauses for a sec, and then it just starts writing code. And the code it writes is not perfect yet, but it is shockingly good in some cases. There was in that case, it used a function that didn't actually exist, but with a couple of changes, the general structure of what it wrote was excellent. It used a list accumulate structure, which is one of the more complex structures in M code. And I was kind of knocked out by it. And then I had it run I said, in R, write a code for a Kolmogorov-Smirnov non-parametric test with a post hoc Duns test and a Bonferroni correction. And bam, it just banged out the code for that perfectly. And I was really taken with it initially, and the more I played with it, the more I realized, there are still some limitations, but the difference between Googling an answer and then running an answer through Chat GPT, I think it just shows the potential of what this thing can be. And at first I was like, oh, this is, for anybody who's in education, this is a problem. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I don't think that's true. And you and I chatted about it, and it was like any other tool, you've got to know how to use it. And I think there's still going to be a real role for educational providers and content providers to teach people how to use it properly, like any other tool. So I'm there's kind of a backlash online about it now. People saying, oh, when you scratch a little bit into it, there's really not as much there as you thought. But I'm still seeing a lot of potential for this.
And this is just the first generation. I mean,
right.
It's only going to get better. And think about it. It's general purpose right now. So what happens when everyone starts applying this to the very niche cases? And for those of you who don't realize, is that Chat GPT can actually write DAX, it can write M, it can write R, it can write Python, it can write all the languages. It helps you write all of the code that you possibly could create.
Yeah.
And that is like phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And it's something that internally we've always tried to recreate, or we've tried to recreate with our code libraries in the Analyst Hub. I mean, that is like that's like a horse, like the Analyst Hub now is like a horse pulling a carriage, versus like some supercar with what Chat GPT can do. But in saying that, one thing I have realized through discussions with Brian, but also watching a ton of like YouTube videos of others using it, like other developers who might work in other languages, is that you still need to know how to architect. You need to it takes away the sort of grunt work, but you still need to know how to architect a solution. And so no one's job's going anywhere in my opinion. This is just going to be an enabler. It's going to bring more scale into what we're doing, right? So it's just going to enable more reports to be created, better reports to be created, more optimized reports to be created, right? I don't think you can't build it itself just yet, but I mean, I wouldn't count against that happening at some point. But that is what it is really enabling, is scale, speed. And so I think from our perspective is we're gonna lean in here. I think it's an amazing tool, and we will we should really create content around how you could actually use it to architect a solution faster. We're always about fast development. Really trying to keep things simple and effective. And this could just be one of those tools that you can use to actually enable that.
I've always thought Googling is a skill, and it's like, I mean, I have a lot of solutions on the forum, and some of those solutions are just because I Googled better than the person asking the question, and it's like I was able to find the answer to some obscure thing. And, I think in some respects, this is very similar in that what you ask it and how you ask it and how you follow up and probe matters in terms of the answer you get back. And so I think kind of being a good user and consumer of this is just like, learning the tricks of Googling well. And, I think we definitely want to dive in and, kind of provide some learnings and best practices and, kind of incorporate that into our teaching. So I completely agree. I think it's amazing. I mean, I just didn't see this coming in terms of how sophisticated the AI was and how advanced it was at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what like I was as I was reading, I'm reading a lot about it. To me, this is like a technological moment in time where there's the realization that these AI engines can really actually change the world. Like they maybe everyone I think has already known that, but now we can see it, right? And I don't think it is going to hurt anyone's role or job if you lean into it, because all it's going to enable is for you to become. You're going to have more superpowers. You're going to be able to learn technologies quicker, and so. Instead, what it could actually mean is that there becomes far more Power BI developers than there ever could have been in the past, because maybe there was some mental challenges of like learning M code and DAX to actually really master Power BI. But it could really double, triple, quadruple the amount of people who actually use and develop inside of Power BI. Same with any other language. Like if I think of myself personally, and I think about wanting to learn Python extensively, for example, right? That to me is still daunting for the vast majority of people, right? But or learning how to use APIs or some of these other like key technologies, like some of these, or even getting into crypto, like all of these things seem so daunting, these languages you have to learn. But if you can have a bot that or an AI that just advises you along the way, and you become just the overall architect. I mean, imagine these superpowers that you could eventually have, and how that could be compounded by millions of people worldwide. I mean, that is just so exciting, so exciting. And yes, it seems like, wow, this could just take over the world, but I think it's just going to empower the world.
I had a similar reaction when I first saw it. It made me think back to when Steve Jobs did the original rollout of the iPhone, and I watched that, as it happened, and I thought, I don't even understand what the implications of this are, but I know they're huge. And it's kind of the same thing when this dropped. It's like, where this goes in a year and 3 years and 5 years, I have no idea, except this feeling that things definitely changed at that point.
Yeah, change for everyone, change for businesses, individuals. I mean, I think you've got to be aware of it. You've got to be on top of it. I think it's as big as the internet. Like just the concept of the internet, right? Like it's boosting creativity, it's boosting output. It's a force multiplier. And so, yeah, I think it's amazing. I really think it's amazing. I mean, I would never have thought I would enjoy watching YouTube clips of someone typing into a chat bot and then seeing code code being written. But it is mesmerizing, absolutely mesmerizing.
Well, it's actually, and I actually like the way, from an interface standpoint, it does it. There's this kind of pregnant pause before it starts answering, and then it gives you kind of a brief text explanation, and then it goes into that black box, and you just see the code unwind, and it's pretty dramatic if as you watch it. But one of the things that I was surprised about was the quality of the narrative explanations. Like, I was asking it things like, explain when you would use measures versus calculated columns, and it really gave some, I thought, quite sophisticated answers, that weren't just, kind of obvious cut and pastes. One of the things I haven't tested yet, but I'm very curious about, is whether it has any capability to optimize. So if you were to take a DAX measure and submit it and say, using DAX, write a measure that does the same thing but performs faster. Can it do that? And I have no doubt at some point it will be able to, but I think that is, the ability to use it to optimize code. I think I'm very curious to see whether it has any capability to do that. I haven't tested that yet.
Yeah. That would be, to me, I mean, it's just inevitable. It's totally inevitable. For those of you who don't know, Microsoft actually have an investment in OpenAI. They have a significant investment. OpenAI uses Microsoft's Azure servers to run a lot of these. And so I think they did some trade where, I don't know, but I read once that OpenAI had, unlimited access to Microsoft's server capabilities or server infrastructure for X number of % of the company. So these are going to be, Microsoft is going to want to monetize that more down the line, and Power BI is their core analytical tool. So it is just inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable, right? So got to get into it. It's super exciting.
I did wonder what their cloud bill was going to be, because it's like, I saw over the weekend, it's like in 5 days they had 1 million people, and there were a couple of times this weekend I tried to get on, and it was you couldn't get on it. It was capacity overrun.
Question on that: what do you think? Do you believe that this could upend Google's dominance?
I'm kind of bad at predicting that stuff, but I kind of looked. The first thing I did was looked at Google stock price last week, and I saw that it was down like 7.5% for the week, and I thought, well, clearly I'm not the first one to think that Google is going to have problems with this. I think a lot of it kind of depends on what OpenAI does with it. Do they go with an ad-supported model and make it public and try to be a competitor to Google? Or do they go with a subscription model where it becomes a kind of a high-cost, high-end, add-on service? I don't know what they're going to do from a business standpoint. And so I think the choice they make will really drive whether this ends up kind of competing right in the teeth of Google or not.
Yeah, I if I was to tell you my own personal view, and based on what I've seen OpenAI do in the past, OpenAI charge on from an API point of view. So they charge you for every time you submit a query or something. What I think is going to happen is, I think if I was to really try and be futuristic here, which I'm not always the best at, but I think they're going to empower the rest of the internet to compete with Google, right? Google kills it because they've got the best search engine, right? They put in front of you the best answers at the best time out of anyone, and they have for a long time, right? And they just absolutely dominate that. But OpenAI is going to enable any website to have that. Literally any website will be able to have that, right? And so we could have it on our website. Maybe a
better version of that.
Yeah, maybe a more niche down version, right? Like maybe you can get a model which trains just on DAX and just on M or something. And it's going to empower, in my view, other websites, so that you won't have to go back to Google every time to get an answer. Say you came to our website and we connected the API, well, you could query for very specific DAX questions, and we could be like the Power BI bot for you, and you wouldn't have to go back and Google and Google and Google. And so it has a number of permutations, The reason why I think that is because to build the infrastructure that Google have created, I mean, I've read books that and articles where people think that it would almost be impossible to recreate the model that they have created. Like, it would cost you too much of infrastructure costs, knowledge, ad network, all of that. It's just too complicated. Like, you just could not recreate it. But a distribution model of just giving your API out to everyone and just enabling you to connect to the API so that other websites can compete better, that seems very doable. I mean, they already do it. So that, to me, is what I think is going to happen. And so that's exciting for us. Like, we if we want to lean in here, we need to have that connection all lined up as soon as it's ready to go, so that users can come to our search, they can search through our content, but also they can search through very specific questions that, almost turn our support forum into literally the bot, turn it into the bot. And then that would cover that would cover 80 to 90% of questions, and then the final 10% might be just like architecting things, like build model related things. So I mean, to me, that's damn exciting.
Yeah, I think there's so much going on that, as a post I had last night, it's just like the world changed in a week, on a lot of different dimensions. And, it's kind of, I find that hugely exciting, to just see where all this takes us. And we're kind of continuing to evolve our offerings, and, it all kind of plays into all that. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. And it's like, if you think about the fact that the millions of people using this, and probably the billions of queries that are getting fed through, it's like the training and the learning that's going to go on in this is just going to be kind of exponential. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah. Also, like, sorry to go into the point as well, I think that also the model of Google is truly being broken down, because if you think about it, everyone who has a website has been a supplier to Google for a long time. You're supplying them content so that you can get traffic from Google, right? So we're just suppliers, really. We're content suppliers. But if you don't need to be a supplier anymore, because you can just give the content to someone when they're on their website, it just really changes things, right? It's like, do you need, if you can get someone onto your website by any other means other than Google and keep them on there, do you need to be a Google supplier anymore? So it's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, let's move on. It's a really fascinating chat, and maybe we'll chat about it again, but we can move on if you like.
Yeah, and the OpenAI thing. I mean, the thing that we didn't even talk about was Dolly, and I think that is a whole nother game changer from the standpoint of, the idea of AI created pictures and illustrations and art. And I know for a post I did the other night, I was looking for a particular thing, and the only thing I could find was Getty Images, and I didn't want to pay a royalty for a LinkedIn post, and so I just went to Dolly and had it generate a photorealistic. I said I need a picture of glass doors padlocked with heavy chains, and it created a perfect picture with no royalty. I said photorealistic style, and I'm sure when you look at that post, it looks like a photograph of a bank that's been seized and locked, and that in and of itself is remarkable. And we're not even really talking about that because Chat GPT is kind of taking the conversation over. But there are so many other things going on in the AI world that I think are going to influence our work, and just kind of general education content in myriad of different ways.
Yep, it's incredible. It's really hit this year, hasn't it? The last couple of years, maybe the last 12 months. Yeah, absolutely incredible. Cool. Okay, let's move on. It's such an interesting topic. We could probably talk for hours on it. But what's your thinking about some of the recent Power BI updates? Give me a few highlights and for listeners, a few things that are exciting you.
Well, it's always interesting because I always look at the monthly update, and I think, what is my first reaction of the thing that is going to be the big winner on this, and then how does that square with what actually happens as we use the updates and kind of incorporate the functions in our day-to-day development. And I'll give you a kind of an example. A while back was that they when they came out with the custom buttons, it was kind of like the third thing on the list, and it wasn't like a big hoopla. There was some other big thing that came out that month that everybody was excited about. And from my standpoint, in terms of what's really influenced my development, that custom button and icon, and the ability to tie those to actions and to format those in different ways, that's had a huge impact. And at the time it was kind of like, okay, custom buttons and icons, cool. And so similarly, for the November update, the one that had been really anticipated was evaluate and log. And this was a function that they had previewed. Jeffrey Wang had written some great blog articles about it in kind of preview mode. And it finally rolled out in November. And I thought I was going to be super excited about it. And there were two other functions that rolled out, one called 2JSON and one called 2CSV. And there wasn't any fanfare on those, and there was a lot of talk online about, okay, I don't know these are cool, but what do we do with them? And it was basically outputting your DAX measures to a JSON format or to a CSV. And we started playing around with them, and all of a sudden, evaluate and log, which was kind of the big debugging innovation, I kind of dropped that one and realized that 2JSON and 2CSV are amazing. That they let us do things that we've never been able to do except using external tools like Tabular Editor or DAX Studio, which was to output the result of a measure to a table. The measures, the kind of law of DAX is that measures return scalars. And there have been ways to kind of subtly cheat that with concatenate-x and unicar 10, but there's never been a way to directly return a table from a measure. And that, you can do it in a DAX query mode with external tools, but we started playing around with this, and all of a sudden realized, oh my God, you can dynamically in your Power BI report have tables materialized as the result of measures. And that, to me, that just blew my mind. And it's like, from a debugging standpoint and an understanding of what DAX is doing internally, that's the best thing I've seen in DAX all year. I mean, in Power BI all year. And it's a function that's barely documented. Nobody's really talking about it. And to me, it's like, we started talking about it at the accelerator that we did last week. And there was a participant, Henrik Westergaard, who had done some experimentation on his own. And he messaged me during the accelerator, and we collaborated, and I posted on this, and he's got some really sharp ways of doing this in terms of formatting and outputting, that to make it really, really usable in the output. And, so that one to me was a game changer. And then just this week, Microsoft dropped the December update, which I wasn't expecting till later in the month. And there are 3 new functions in that, which are offset, index, and window, which let you, you and I have talked a lot about over the years that we're huge fans of the offsets that Melissa DeCourte uses in her extended date table. And so kind of using that as a way to basically run an easier version of all the time intelligence functions. But the downside is you have to use a date table that incorporates those offsets. And this set of functions basically, and I've only been playing with it for a couple of days, but it lets you do all that dynamically, easily within DAX measures. Create these offsets in a virtual way, use them, and not have to materialize them as physical columns. And I think there's some incredible use for this. So I posted about this last night on LinkedIn. We're running some test examples. Interestingly, right before this this podcast, Greg Deckler had posted a video. I haven't been able to make it all the way through that yet because we had to jump on here, but he's got a little different view on it. He and I usually are very much in agreement on things, and I think he's a bit less bullish on these than I am. But I think these have huge potential to be very consequential in the way we do DAX. So, there's a lot going on in Power BI that I think is, definitely kudos to the DAX development team that they're giving us some great new capabilities.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I will happily admit I haven't tested them out extensively myself, due to other focuses. But yeah, I get a feeling. I in one of my recent podcasts, was it with Chris
Webb?
Yeah, Chris Webb. The general gist there was that the Power BI team know that Power BI is still too hard, and is not giving everyone, it is empowering a ton of people, no doubt about it, but there's millions, tens of millions more that they can empower if they can make it easier. And so, whilst these are new functions being laid onto many other functions, things like debugging DAX has been notoriously difficult. Has been, things like various date table configurations and analysis on non-standard date tables. It's just too difficult. It's too hard for the everyday user, right? And so wherever they can, I think they're trying to give users options to get to what they need. And with all these changes, it's upon us to also help that, push that direction, get the user what they get users of Power BI what they want and when they need it, and also empower it and enable faster speed and scale and how they execute on it.
It's interesting because I think oftentimes when Microsoft tries to make things easier for beginning users, they just make it worse for everybody. And I think there are some horrendous features that need to be shut off or gotten rid of. That the auto detector relationships, I think, is the worst feature in the program. Auto date time is terrible. There are some other things they've done. I think I think basically implicit measures are very wrongheaded, and are not a good route for users to go down. I think
explain it, implicit measures, just for everyone.
So basically, rather than in the field well, when you click on a column, you can have that aggregate within the field well. So you can add an average or a sum, and you doing that rather than just writing a simple measure is just in my mind, there's never an advantage to doing that.
Totally.
Other than doing some, really quick and dirty debug checks, but it's so easy to write those core measures. And, I mean, you do it through, kind of pulling it in on your template. I do it through scripting in Tabulator. I mean, I literally have one script that writes all my basic measures. It'll write 15 of them at a time, and or more. I think NJ Park had a great video where he created like 100 measures in like 30 seconds. Just basic measures that he was going to use and scripted. And so, there's easy ways to do that properly. And I just think some of the attempts to make Power BI easier just make it worse and actually lead beginners down a very bad track. And, I think, for example, and it's just a preview feature, and maybe it gets better, it kind of goes back to the AI thing, but the natural language DAX just doesn't work at this point. I think somebody tested it on Ruth's 25 days of DAX, and it missed 22 of 25 answers, and that's just never going to be close to good enough. And but I think, on the flip side, when I look at what I think they're really doing right, is not to try to make things automatic, but to make things transparent. And I think these new 2 JSON function, 2 CSV, I think the index and offset and window make DAX easier to see what's going on behind the scenes. And to me, that's a much more productive way to go. If the thing that makes DAX hard is that you can't, in some cases, break it down within context and see what DAX is doing. You've got to kind of visualize it in your head. And that's hard to do that's hard to do for us. And it's certainly almost impossible for a beginning user to do. And so being able to see on screen what your intermediate calculations are doing, to me, is a huge plus. And I think it's gonna change the way not just people debug DAX, but I think the way they learn DAX. If you can just put a measure up that just shows what your intermediate tables are doing, it becomes so much clearer as you step through your slicer and you step through your tables to be able to see that. And so I'm using it extensively, and I kind of think it's one of those things, if we can show beginning users how to do that, it'll make the program much clearer. And so, some of the things I think I'm quite critical of that Microsoft's doing, but I think some of the things they're doing is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally agree. Okay, so let's move on to this last key item that I wanted to cover before I need to run, unfortunately. We've got some exciting things going on. We've got some exciting things happening at Enterprise DNA and behind the scenes. I mean, I was trying to describe the year, Enterprise DNA's year, to my in-laws yesterday, actually, and I was thinking, it's been let's call it a transformative year. We've really transformed what we are and what we want to be, at Enterprise DNA this year. And but it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. We've got more things that we want to do. And we're constantly thinking about how, we can empower, users around not only Power BI now, but also various other tools around the Power BI ecosystem: Power Automate, Power Apps, Python, R, SQL, Excel. So we've obviously been really branching out on our content, but we've got some other things in the works, and maybe a lot of these have been your creativity that has sort of constructed them. So do you want to maybe let everyone give a little bit of a sneak peek on what we're thinking about?
Yeah, so we got a whole bunch of stuff coming. The first thing is just coursework that we've got an amazing array of stuff coming out. We've got, I think I've tallied up, and we got 15 new courses that are going to be coming out in the next 3 months, and everything from certification courses. We've kind of dived in on Excel, which is historically something we had not done a lot of content on. We've got some great Excel series, as well as kind of a full Excel certification series coming. DP 500 certification on the heels of the PL 300 course. So coursework is always a big part, and kind of making sure that we're always talking to our subscribers and kind of saying, okay, where are the gaps in what you need, and filling those with new courses from great instructors and experts. But I think for me, two things that come to mind, one of which is the platform itself. That when Enterprise DNA started, it was a platform that you had put together, kind of using some off-the-shelf parts, using some custom design, and it was great for its time. But I think as we got more complex, and more content and more functionality, it kind of outgrew that platform. And I think kind of the way in which you kind of burned that to the ground this year and rebuilt it entirely from scratch, I think it opens the door for us to do a million things we could not do on the old platform. And I'm super excited about that. And so, one of the things is we've really, I think, courses and training and webinars are great, but you got to practice. And I think you've always been, a proponent that, until you get in and get your hands dirty and do it yourself, you're not really fully learning it. And
can I just jump in there for 1 second? And I do want to say, Brian, I think that Enterprise DNA, along those lines, was the first to create a challenge program. We were the first to create it, and that was because of that very reason. Now every damn person on earth has copied us, but that leads into our newest idea.
And I still think that the challenge serves a great purpose, and I think there's very few learning opportunities that are as rich as building a report start to finish, in community, getting comments on that, seeing how other people address the same report. And I think from a career standpoint, there is no better investment you can make than to build out a great portfolio. And I think one of the things that I run into all the time with people is they say, well, how do I build a great portfolio if all my work examples are confidential? And, my answer is, I think one of the things you can do sometimes is you can mock up the data and kind of use your work report with non-confidential data. But even that in some cases isn't possible. And so the way I've seen people do it and the way I've done it myself, and actually what led you to get to know me and recognize, my potential to come on board, was participation in the challenges. And so, I see over and over again the ability of people to build careers and build recognition by participating in challenges, getting that out on social media. But I think for me, one of the light bulb moments this year was the Excel BI nightly challenge. And, one of my goals, I always set learning goals for myself. And one of them was to get better with M code this year. I knew my M coding wasn't up to snuff, and I really wanted to improve that. And so about 4 months ago, VJ Verma started posting these nightly challenges, and I jumped in on those. And there's a whole community of us that, for me, it's at about 11:30 p.m. every night it posts, and everybody jumps on and starts doing these. And I've gotten orders of magnitude better from just 4 months of every night banging out code. And I've learned from the people in the community, and we've actually, Enterprise DNA has partnered with VJ. So we're an official partner of Excel BI, and that gives us the right to basically use all of the examples for teaching and for, challenges, and for, kind of to help our subscribers kind of leverage the great work that he's done. But I think what you and I talked about was really, hey, that model works for everything. We can do data modeling, we can do DAX, we can do, Power Query at a less advanced level than what VJ's doing for beginning users. We can do visualization, we can do all sorts of things that, somebody can jump in and say, okay, what do I need to get better at? And maybe for somebody, it's not Power Query or M coding, it's DAX, or it's improving their visualization skills, or it's, they want to learn DNEB, and being able to jump in and say, here's an exercise, there are multiple exercises per week. You can kind of jump in, and, when you and I were chatting about it, the thing that kind of came to my mind was a gym or a workout facility where you're not committed to, running a marathon, but you're committed to going to the gym, banging out 45 minutes of hard work, going home, going on with your life, and then doing it again in a couple of days. And over the course of a period, you just get stronger and, kind of develop greater ability. And I think that's really what we want to do with this. And so I think we're very close to, to getting that rolled out. And we're, again, kind of scanning the horizon for our experts and some external experts to run these different workouts. And so, I'm going to be running some of them. I think, I'm going to be not only running some of them, I'm going to be doing some of them, that I'm already not sleeping that much anyway. And I think I'm going to be sleeping less, staying up, doing, DNEB challenge and doing DAX challenges. And so, super excited about this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super pumped as well. I mean, the idea came from just out of thin air of how do we impact more? How do we impact more data analysts every week? That was kind of my vision. And then the workout idea, I think, is just brilliant, right? It's like you're going in for a short workout, do some reps, and then you're done, and then you can, go on with your day. You're just slowly building up the muscle memory, right? Like that's kind of the idea. And I think it's exciting on multiple fronts, because we're really going to expand across multiple different languages and technologies. So, where it's not just Power BI here, it's going to be a whole raft of different streams. And also it's going to be completely integrated into various aspects of our platform. So you'll be able to earn points. You'll be able to showcase your portfolio of submissions to your workouts. We've even got a portfolio feature that we're really thinking hard about that will bring together your challenge submissions, your workout submissions, your certificates, your certifications, all into this one public page that you can showcase. And that to me is in combination quite transformative. So we've gone from a transformative year 2022, and I think we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again, and this is just going to be one of the first things we do around that. Brian, I'm very sorry, but I do actually have to wind things up, and we just haven't had enough time. That's why we need to do it.
Anytime you want. I'm happy to. I love talking about this stuff, and there's so much to, that changes in the course of a given week. There's always going to be interesting stuff to chat about. So happy to do it.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Thank you very much. Brian. Thanks all for tuning in. And sorry we had to wrap up a bit early, but yeah, we'll get some more of this chit chat and discussions out to you. Because yeah, I think it's good. We probably don't actually talk enough about what's going on internally at Enterprise DNA, and probably most of our listeners are Enterprise DNA users. So, yeah. So I think that's a good thing to cover more often as well. Okay.
Yeah, we got some big stuff we didn't even hit on, so we got material for the next one already.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Brian. Thanks all. Talk to you next time.
Thanks, Tim.
See ya.